Hi, this is Rick. I don't know. I think I need to go to a hairdresser because, this is not exactly what I want, but it's very close to the look I want. This is a YouTube booktube on gender. Now, what I want to talk about is gender. All right. I got to clean my nose first because, I got nose hairs, which is, I don't know if it's a male thing only, but I haven't seen a lot of women with snot snot hanging from a hair, which is the biggest problem with hair other than feeling it. But you feel, snot will cling to a hair. Do women have that problem? They probably, if they do, they probably have some tried and true method of dealing with it. Like a little thing that goes like a lawnmower, a nasal lawnmower. For nasal lawn, go to John Deere or Dear John. That's a joke. What brought this up, gender, is not what you're thinking. You're probably thinking it comes from a message that was left on Instagram in which somebody said we could improve our list by having more female writers or woman writers. I'm not sure which he used. He didn't say chicks or babes or broads. I had to answer because I'm the editor, and our list has 2 women now. But before it had 2 women, it had 0. And then it had 1. And then it had another one doing the same book twice, or not the same book, but the same Vesna Radic, okay? And then Vera Svilango did the drawings from Piran, so that's in there. So now I think we've got a 2. Isn't that a typical thing? Like 2 out of 40 authors, or maybe we have 35 authors. 2 out of 35 are women. And isn't that the way it goes? The quota system would suggest we need between 15 and 20, I think. But there is no quota system. And so I wonder. There's been a lot of controversy over the years. People are very nervous about what they say, and nobody wants to say, oh, these are bad times for men in New York who write maximalist novels or big novels or literary novels, because women are getting published and not men. Foreigners in translation are getting published and not men, usually women. Any LBQT, are getting published and not men. And, there's some truth to it. The numbers are changing. The percentages are changing, for sure. What do you think of that? What do I think of that? Well, we could go back to the argument about quotas. How do you fix a historical wrong? Well, there isn't a good way to do it, because the best way to fix it would be to go back and redo it. And you can't do that. So you have quotas. And the only real problem with quotas is that it gives the impression that, let's say that it's time to publish black writers. And so everybody has a quota, and we'll get the impression that a black writer will get a book published over 4 better white writers, and it will happen sometimes if you have a quota that someone who is less qualified than someone else will get a job. That has to be true, but at the same time, how else do you solve it? The best solution is a long-term socioeconomic plan towards equality, and that costs the oligarch the oligarchs way too much money. So what you do is you put the onus on the individual small companies or large companies. In this case, New York presses are large companies. And anyway, I'm sorry. I get caught admiring myself sometimes. So but the real problem is that if it's a problem, is that there will be historic shifts, and if you're a woman and you're a great writer, well, it's about fucking time that you're more likely to get published than you were, a lot more likely to get published than you were 30, 40, 50 years ago. 100, 200, 500. And so if that means that men are, well, join the fucking club, sorry. But it also, this is my favorite argument, it also is true that no matter how many women are being published, for instance, and of what quality, there are lots of great women writers who aren't getting published. So, Fala Bogo for small presses, what I would point out to anyone who would be critical of my list is that I haven't turned down any female writers. No women writers have come to our press at this point. Maybe it's part of a self-defeating circle. If we don't have women writers think, oh, not a good place for a woman writer. But we'll get a writer of the quality of Jeff Bursey, or Bill Clark, or Tim Connolly, or Lee Thompson, my Canadian horseman. And we'll get Canadian horsewomen eventually. And it'll be a well-established, well-regarded, but poor-selling woman who's sick of the process, sick of the bullshit, hears about our press, hears that it's a writer's press, and that she will get whatever she wants in terms of the production and so on if she comes to our press. And that'll happen eventually. But right now, there are probably a lot of small presses where women will say, oh, okay. I don't know the small press world all that well, so let me use the Asian diaspora aspirant. That writer should go to Kaya Press. Kaya Press is a small press, but they specialize in Asian diaspora, which excludes me. I did think of them at one point when I wrote a novel about India, but I'm not an Indian, and so they're going by the writer, not the subject, and it's a great press. It's they publish Seshu Foster, who is only half Asian. Think about that in terms of your quota system. Does that work? Does it not work? So I really don't see that there's an issue, and I hate thinking about gender because in general I don't. When I'm writing a character who's a female, I don't consider how she'll be read by people who care about the gender, norm. So like, for instance, in The Manifold Destiny of Eddie Vegas, if you just read the first 100 pages, you might think, ooh, that guy's a misogynist. There's that one woman being objectified. There's that one being shredded because of her personality, and her husband's point of view is the one that's taken by the book. And then there's a nickname of an Arletonian cast, Picasso Tits, she's called. But she is the best character in the book, in my view, the most sympathetic, and gets some of the best chapters. And there are two other female characters who have giant roles and very, if you think of things this way, and I don't, they happen to be women because, one, because it fit the narrative, and the other because it didn't not fit the narrative, and the historical figure she was based on was a woman. And so I had no reason to change her gender, and she worked. And she's the first owner of a taxi company in Nevada, and she also happens to be an autodidact, reads the papers from San Francisco and reads a lot of history. And she has a long thing. I think in one of Chris Villa's reviews, he talks about her and her knowledge of history, which he attributes to me mistakenly. It's her, not me. But anyway, this kind of thing happens when you think too much about these things. Well, it's not up to me to change that. But the other thing, the final thing I want to say about this is that the problem, as I see it, is not men versus women. The problem is who is being read generally. And I talked to someone from an East Coast writer's workshop recently, and her favorite writer was Donna Tartt. And I've never read Donna. No, I read The Goldfinch, and I was duly unimpressed. I wasn't excited by it. The writing didn't stimulate me in any way. I never read The Secret History, and I never will. I know the story, and I'm just not interested in the workshop students of Bennington, Virginia, or is it? No, they're not virgins. Vermont, Bennington, Vermont, and all that nonsense. And I'm sure there's more to the book than that, but fuck it, I can't read everything, and neither can they. In fact, I can't read much. I asked this woman, okay, so who else do you read? Jeffrey Eugenides. Okay, another pastel-covered, modern, current best-selling literary type. And then I just started, well, how about Juan Rulfo? Nope, never heard of him. Juan Carlos Onetti? Nope, never heard of him. Guimarães Rosa? Nope, never heard of him. Mario Vargas Llosa? Nope, never heard of him. The only one, because she's been getting a lot of attention lately, not Luis Valenzuela, but you know who I mean, Brazil, not Isabel Allende, bestseller, some thin stuff there. Not Jose Donoso, not Roberto Bolaño, she would have heard of Borges, but only heard of him. Cortázar, no. I think you get my point. Antonio Lobo Antunes, Pessoa, Alfred Dublin, the great writers of the 20th century. Well, they're still teaching at writers' workshops the same crap, the same thin, unexciting tripe. And this is where I see a real problem. The quality of literature is going down. And I'm really sick of seeing Rachel Cusk and her pastel covers. I've never read her. I probably never will. But I know that, until I read, I have on the other side of my desk, I have a long row of books that I need to read yet. And they're not all by men, but very few are by people from the United States. One of them is Porteous by John Cowper Powys. That's one that I was thinking of last night. And, well, I got a lot to read ahead of me. And so do you, if you're going to Bennington. It wasn't Bennington this woman was from, or any of these schools. Go find your own fucking, reading list and get out of class. Get out of the class. Get out of that class before they destroy you. Goodbye from Grandma.